And I called it, in my book, I called it culture talk. Culture talk, which is you can read some people's politics from their culture. Not everybody, but some people's politics can be read from their culture. These are the pre-modern people. You can't read modern people's politics from their culture because modern people's politics have to do with issues. Pre-modern people's politics has to do with culture. And the first point I want to sort of put before you is that what's wrong with this actually is simply the fact that all culture is historic. All culture, without exception. Absolutely without exception. I mean, I thought that we kind of arrived at this through a critique of colonialism, but we seem to be back there. And I guess some critiques need to be made over and over again in light of new circumstances. Second issue, which I thought, second assumption built into this debate, which is possibly a stronger assumption, is that even if we accept that all culture is historical, still cultures, or the word now is civilization, are to be thought of as sort of self-contained containers, so that you can actually think of a history of each civilization, from time immemorial on until now. And as I began to read it, I realized that political Islam was first and foremost a response to the colonial condition. That if you want to historicize political Islam, you have to place it in the context of the colonial condition, because the big question was what to do now that we are occupied. And the question is raised. I identified three thinkers who I thought were crucial in this history, and I'll just briefly talk about each of them. The first was Al-Afghani. Al-Afghani, the Iranian thinker, Jamaluddin Al-Afghani, who goes to India, is in India in 1857 during the first Indian uprising, then goes to Egypt, goes to France, has public debates with Renan in Paris. And Al-Afghani's question is this: what do we do? The British have occupied, the Western powers have occupied, and his response is, just put very briefly, his response is that if you're occupied from the outside, it is prima facie evidence that there is something wrong with your own society. There's some internal weaknesses, and so the only way forward is to address these internal weaknesses. And if you want to address these internal weaknesses, the only way to address them is to open participation to larger and larger numbers. So Al-Afghani's project is a social project. Right? It's a social project of, I won't call it democracy, but simply more and more participation by larger and larger sectors of society in order to change society and to change the state. And that kind of holds, generalizing grossly, it kind of holds for about 100 years. It holds until the Islamists begin to come to power, when the terms of the discussion begin to change. The first big change comes with Maududi. Maududi is an Indian thinker, and Maududi is in India, 1940s, when the partition happens, India and Pakistan. Maududi moves to Pakistan. Here's the great promise, and he comes to Pakistan and he's totally disillusioned. He's totally disillusioned. What is this? Pakistan looks to him as banal as India. That these people simply have different names and different rituals, but otherwise they're no different from the ones I left behind me. They're the same. He said, Na Pakistan. Na Pakistan in Urdu would mean not yet Pakistan, na, Pakistan, or napak, impure stuff, impure place. Either way, this is its critique. And Maududi turns the paradigm of political Islam upside down. And he says the problem is that these Muslims are not real Muslims. The problem is, how do you make real Muslims of them? And the only way to make real Muslims of them is to turn political Islam into a state project, not into a social project. Because there is no social agency to create political Islam. So only the few ideologically pure, committed must come together, and they must take power. And then they must use that power to Islamize society. So, turn the paradigm upside down. Now, from where I was coming, this didn't strike me as anything unusual. It actually seemed to me that this was part of a larger trend in the nationalist movement. That the disillusion with the results of nationalism, with political independence, was so widespread in so many places. And out of this disillusion was coming a statist form of nationalism. And you could see it in Nehru, you could see it in Sukarno, you could see it in Nasser, you could see it in Nkrumah, you could see it in Nyerere, you could see it in many places, you know. And that this shift of Maududi had to be understood as part of a larger shift. It couldn't be understood as Islamic. It had to be understood, to make sense of it, had to be understood as part of a larger shift. The third important thinker is Sayyid Qutb, the Egyptian thinker. And Maududi gets translated into Arabic. It's read by Sayyid Qutb. One of the key thoughts in Maududi is on sovereignty. Sovereignty belongs to God. Sovereignty cannot belong to man. Man in a generic sense. Sovereignty belongs to God. And this idea carries to Egypt. It's read by Sayyid Qutb. And Qutb is part of Muslim Brothers, which is a different kind of formation, which is a more Afghani-like formation, which gets involved in the coup that brings Nasser to power, and then they attempt to bump off Nasser, or some of them attempt to bump off Nasser, and some are arrested, thrown into jail. Qutb is one of them, thrown into jail. Qutb writes a book in Nasser's jail under torture and everything. It's called Signposts. It's translated Signposts. And one was the introduction, where Qutb says that he wrote this book for the Vanguard. I thought I was reading Lenin, What is to be done. For the Vanguard. And then in the text, Qutb makes an argument. He's concerned not about why there should be an Islamic state, but how can an Islamic state be created. It's about the means, how to do politics. And he's preoccupied with violence, political violence. And Qutb argues in the book that we must distinguish friends from enemies. And with friends, we use persuasion and argument. And with enemies, we use violence. And again, this argument was very familiar. I could think of Mao's writings and his distinction.